For 12 years, I gave my life to that company. I sacrificed weekends, missed birthdays, and poured every ounce of ambition I had into building Whitestone Global from a struggling logistics firm into one of the most respected names in the industry. I wasn't just an employee. I was family. Or so I thought. Mark, Jenna, and Victor, the CEO, CFO, and head of sales, were more than colleagues. We celebrated holidays together, toasted each other's promotions, and even vacationed as families. Our kids knew each other by name. To me, they weren't just co-workers. They were my inner circle. My people. That illusion shattered the day the scandal broke. It started small. A few misfiled invoices. Questions about missing inventory. At first, I wasn't worried. I handled crises for breakfast. But soon the whispers turned into accusations. By the time corporate auditors showed up with grim faces and clipboards, it was already too late. Someone had funneled millions through fake vendors, padding contracts and siphoning funds. On paper, all roads led to me. I sat in the conference, room surrounded by people I trusted, Mark at the head of the table, Jenna to his right, Victor glaring like I'd personally insulted his entire lineage. They didn't look confused. They didn't look concerned. They looked prepared. "Alex," Mark began, his voice cold and rehearsed, "we're all shocked. But the evidence is undeniable." I stared at him, my mind spinning. "You think I did this?" "We don't want to believe it," Jenna added, clutching her pearls like she hadn't probably approved half the shady deals herself. Victor just shook his head in disgust. "Unbelievable. We trusted you." They fired me that afternoon. No severance, no thank you, no chance to explain. HR escorted me out while employees whispered and avoided eye contact. News spread like wildfire. Top exec accused in Whitestone embezzlement scandal. My name, Alex Pierce, was dragged through the mud. I lost everything overnight. Friends stopped returning my calls. My parents, humiliated, asked me not to visit for a while. Even my wife, Emily, looked at me differently. "How could you?" she whispered one night before packing a bag and taking our daughter to her mother's house. I was utterly alone. For weeks, I stayed locked inside my apartment, curtains drawn, phone off. I spiraled into depression and rage. Every news article, every social media post, every disgusted glance I got at the grocery store screamed the same thing. You're guilty. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. It clears your mind. One night, while staring blankly at the ceiling, a horrible truth hit me like a freight train. I didn't make those payments. I didn't authorize those vendors. Someone framed me. Not just someone. Mark, Jenna, Victor. It was obvious now. They knew exactly what was happening. I started putting the pieces together. Months before the scandal, Jenna pushed hard for me to take over procurement and vendor relations. Victor constantly dumped last-minute approvals on my desk. Mark? He encouraged me to trust the team and streamline the process. I was the fall guy. They set me up from the start. Fury replaced depression almost instantly. But revenge? That was still far away. I knew better than to lash out immediately. These people were pros. They had money, power, connections. I had nothing. So I did what they never expected. I disappeared. I moved 3 states away. Got a job at a tiny logistics startup. Kept my head down. While the world forgot Alex Pierce, I was quietly studying everything I could about their business. I watched as Mark, Jenna, and Victor picked the bones of Whitestone Global clean. After pinning everything on me, they restructured, laid off half the staff, and gave themselves obscene bonuses. Within 2 years, they had tripled their wealth. But their greed also made them careless. While working at the startup, I made friends in the industry. Suppliers, partners, even former Whitestone employees who got cut loose. I listened, learned, and connected dots they thought were buried. Whispers of offshore accounts, kickbacks, insider deals. They weren't just greedy. They were dirty to the core. I knew then that redemption wasn't enough. I didn't just want my name cleared. I wanted to destroy them. Every single one. But revenge isn't loud. Revenge doesn't announce itself. Revenge waits. And so did I. Year after year, I quietly built my own company, Phoenix Logistics. Small at first, then faster and faster as my reputation, untainted and honest, spread. Clients tired of Whitestone's arrogance and shady pricing came to me. Good people who remembered what the company used to stand for joined my team. We became a silent storm building on the horizon. Meanwhile, Mark, Jenna, and Victor remained blind. They mocked me at industry events, when my name even came up at all. Alex? He's probably flipping burgers somewhere, I overheard Victor say once at a gala. I smiled quietly in my corner. Let them laugh. Let them believe I was gone. I wasn't gone. I was growing. 5 years after they ruined my life, the moment finally came. Whitestone Global, bloated and poorly managed under their rule, started losing key accounts. Guess who they came crawling to? Me. Phoenix Logistics became the go-to alternative. One by one, I stole their clients. One by one, I turned their allies against them. When they finally realized the threat I posed, it was too late. They tried to stop me. Lawsuits, smear campaigns, private investigators. But I was ready. Every skeleton they thought buried, I unearthed them. Through connections I had carefully nurtured, I leaked documents to regulators, fed evidence to the press, and watched as headlines once again destroyed Whitestone's name. Only this time, it wasn't my face splashed across them. It was theirs. Mark, Jenna, Victor. They weren't villains in a corporate drama anymore. They were criminals. As lawsuits and criminal charges mounted, Whitestone Global collapsed, shares worthless, reputation obliterated. They lost their jobs, their fortunes, and in Jenna's case, even her marriage. I bought the company out of bankruptcy, dirt cheap. I kept the name, Whitestone, but not to honor them. No, I kept it so that every time someone mentioned it, they would remember how I took everything back. When I walked into my old office, now mine again, I found Mark waiting for me, broke, pathetic, pleading. Please, Alex, you win. Just don't ruin me completely. I smiled coldly. You ruined yourself the day you betrayed me. Enjoy the fall. That's when I realized this wasn't revenge anymore. This was justice, and I was just getting started. Taking Whitestone back was only the first step. Watching Mark, Jenna, and Victor fall from their pedestals felt satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. They had taken everything from me years ago. My job, my reputation, my family. They left me to rot while they celebrated. No. Taking the company wasn't revenge. That was just reclamation. The real punishment would be slower, more personal. The world thought they had vanished into disgrace. Headlines faded. Public interest shifted. People forgot. But I didn't. I knew they still lived comfortably enough. Savings tucked away. Connections still intact. Reputation bruised, but not shattered. They could rebuild. They would rebuild. I couldn't allow that. So I waited and watched. Revenge, I had learned, isn't just about striking back. It's about timing, about making sure when you hit, there's no getting back up. Victor was first. He always had a weakness for gambling. Years ago, during friendly poker nights, I saw how reckless he could be. After his downfall, he leaned into old habits hard. It started small, bets here and there. then riskier moves. Soon, whispers reached me that Victor owed serious money to dangerous people. I didn't lift a finger to help. Instead, I made sure certain creditors knew exactly where to find him. Within months, he was drowning in debt. Cars repossessed. Home foreclosed. The final blow? I anonymously bought the deed to his family's vacation home when it went to auction. I didn't need it. I just wanted him to know that even his happiest memories now belonged to me. Jenna was next. She had always cared more about image than reality. She lived for charity galas, exclusive clubs, and name-dropping. After Whitestone collapsed, her social circle shrank, but she clung desperately to what little status she had left. I took that too. Quietly, I began buying influence at the places she still held dear, sponsoring events, donating under new LLCs. One by one, her invitations dried up. No more seats at fundraisers, no more private dinners. Her name became synonymous with scandal and failure. The final blow came during a board election at a prestigious women's business association she co-founded. Through allies I had carefully cultivated, she was voted out publicly and humiliated in front of her peers. She sobbed as security escorted her out. Jenna, once the queen of social circles, was now an outcast. Mark was different. He wasn't weak like Victor or vain like Jenna. He was calculating, cold, ruthless. Taking him down would require patience. I knew he had squirreled away assets offshore. Fake companies, hidden accounts. He planned his exit long before the collapse. But he made one mistake. He trusted the wrong lawyer. That lawyer owed me. For 2 years, I fed that lawyer everything he needed to quietly unwind Mark's financial fortress. Slow leaks to government agencies. Small audits that led to bigger investigations. Until one day, Mark's entire offshore network collapsed, like a house of cards. Frozen assets, tax fraud charges, everything seized. He lost every penny. The news broke while he was on vacation in Europe. The same night, I made sure his ex-wife, who had been cheated on and discarded years earlier, got full custody of their kids and sued for back support he couldn't pay. Mark returned to the U.S. a broke, disgraced man who couldn't even afford his own legal defense. 3 down, justice served. But as much as I hated them, as much as they deserved every ounce of ruin I delivered, something strange happened. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt relieved, like a weight I had carried for years was slowly lifting. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about making them suffer. It was about making myself whole again. Still, there was one thing left. Emily. My wife. The one person who should have stood by me, but instead chose to walk away when things got ugly. For years, I told myself I had moved on, that she wasn't part of this, that what we had was dead, but seeing Mark, Jenna, and Victor crumble, it reignited something. She left when I was at my lowest. She didn't believe in me. She didn't even ask if I was innocent. She just packed her bags and left with our daughter. A few months after, Mark's downfall made headlines. Emily reached out. I still remember her text like it was yesterday. Hey, saw the news. I'm so proud of you. Maybe we can catch up? I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part, the darker part, wanted to hurt her the way she hurt me. But no, that wasn't who I was anymore. Revenge had run its course. What I wanted now was clarity. I agreed to meet. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. She looked nervous, smaller somehow. I was scared back then, she confessed. I didn't know what to believe. You didn't even ask, I replied coldly. She had no defense, just apologies. I listened, but I didn't offer forgiveness. I'm not angry anymore, I told her. But you made your choice. You chose to leave me when I needed you most. Now, I've rebuilt without you." She looked down, tears welling. "What about our daughter?" "I'll always be her father," I said firmly. "But you? You're not part of my story anymore." That was the real revenge. Not cruelty, not punishment, indifference. Emily didn't deserve hatred. She deserved nothing. As I walked away that day, something shifted inside me. The storm had passed. The people who ruined my life had been reduced to nothing. And me? I stood taller than ever. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Whitestone was mine now. I rebuilt it from ashes. And with my enemies erased from existence, I was ready to become something I never imagined before. Unstoppable. When the dust settled and the enemies were erased, something strange filled the void they left behind. Silence. No more lawsuits. No more public slander. No more whispers behind closed doors. For the first time in years, I was free to move without obstacles. But freedom wasn't enough. I wanted more. I didn't just want Whitestone to recover. I wanted it to dominate. I wanted the entire industry to know that the man they once discarded had become the king they would all bow to. The first step was rebuilding. Whitestone had been left in ruins by Mark, Jenna, and Victor's greed. Morale was non-existent. Partnerships, fragile. The name itself, once respected, had become a cautionary tale. I faced the harsh reality. If I wanted Whitestone to thrive again, I had to destroy what was left of its broken identity and build something new from scratch. That meant tough decisions. I cleaned house. Executives loyal to the old regime, gone. Toxic managers, fired. Every corner of the company was scrutinized. If they didn't fit my vision, they were removed. No exceptions. At first there was fear. Employees wondered if I was just another tyrant, wielding power recklessly. But they soon realized I was nothing like my predecessors. I wasn't interested in control for the sake of ego. I was interested in results and fairness. I rebuilt teams with new leaders who shared my values: transparency, innovation, loyalty. Bonuses were tied to performance, not favoritism. For the first time in years, hard work actually meant something here. Clients who had fled during the scandal slowly returned, impressed by the transformation. Our stock prices rebounded faster than anyone predicted. Analysts who once called Whitestone a dead brand began using new words: reborn, agile, visionary. But power doesn't just come from fixing what's broken. It comes from crushing your rivals. That was my next step. The same companies that mocked me when I was down, who cozied up to Mark, Jenna, and Victor while I was disgraced, became my targets. I spent months analyzing them, finding cracks in their foundations. I knew which clients they mistreated. I knew which suppliers hated them. One by one, I approached them, not as the desperate man they once pitied, but as the leader they now respected. Whitestone has changed, I told them confidently. We stand for something now. Work with us and never be treated like you're disposable again. They listened, and they moved. Contracts flipped, revenue soared, rivals panicked. They slashed prices, offered desperate deals, but it didn't matter. The tide had turned. My vision spread like wildfire. In 2 years, Whitestone wasn't just surviving, it was the undisputed leader in the industry. I became the face of this new era. Business magazines praised my comeback. Talk shows invited me to share my story. I refused most. I didn't need their validation. I already knew who I was. Still, I agreed to one major interview. I sat across from the host, calm and collected as cameras rolled. You went from being fired in disgrace to rebuilding Whitestone into the top company in the market. How did you do it? She asked. I smiled slightly, leaning forward. Simple. They threw me aside and thought I'd disappear. But while they celebrated, I worked. I planned. And when they least expected it, I took everything back. And more. The clip went viral. Overnight, I became not just a CEO, but a symbol. The man who lost everything and turned it into something untouchable. Strangers stopped me in public to shake my hand. Young entrepreneurs quoted my words on social media. Whitestone became more than a company. It became a legend. Yet, despite all the attention and accolades, I remained grounded. I knew power could corrupt. I had seen it firsthand with Mark, Jenna, and Victor. That would never be me. I visited departments personally. I listened to employees at every level. I created mentorship programs to help rising talents. I ensured that what I built was more than just a monument to revenge. It was a community. But deep down, part of me knew the story wasn't finished yet. Power attracts enemies, and ghosts never stay buried forever. One evening, while reviewing expansion plans in my office, my assistant entered hesitantly. "Sir, there's something you need to see." She handed me a plain envelope. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a single piece of paper. 5 words, scribbled hastily. "You may have won now." No signature, no threats, just that sentence. I read it twice, then calmly folded it and placed it in my drawer. I knew exactly who sent it. Vanessa, the wife of Victor. The quiet observer who had stayed out of everything but never forgot what happened. She was the last remnant of the fallen regime. And clearly, she wasn't finished. But neither was I. Sitting back in my chair, staring at the city lights, I felt no fear. Only focus. Let them come. Let whoever still held a grudge try their best. I didn't just survive betrayal. I didn't just win revenge. I became untouchable. And anyone foolish enough to challenge me next would discover what happens when the King of Shadows refuses to fall. The note stayed in my drawer for weeks. I didn't mention it to anyone. Not my board, not my closest advisors, not even my personal security team. Why? Because it didn't scare me. It fascinated me. "You may have won now." Those words weren't a threat. They were a promise. Vanessa. Of course it was her. The quiet, elegant manipulator behind Victor for all those years. Unlike Mark and Jenna, Vanessa never tried to claw into power directly. She played the long game, pulling strings from behind the curtain, and now it seemed she wanted to finish what her husband started. Part of me almost admired her. Almost. Weeks turned to months. The company thrived. New contracts rolled in. Our global expansion kicked off with flawless precision. But behind the scenes, small cracks began to form. It started with strange calls to our partners, anonymous warnings about Whitestone's shady past. Then, fake online reviews tanked our supplier ratings overnight. Soon after, 2 of our senior executives were hit with fabricated scandals. None of it stuck. None of it could be traced. But the timing was too perfect, too coordinated. Vanessa. Only she could pull the strings like this. I stayed calm. Publicly, I acted unfazed. But privately, I shifted gears. I quietly expanded my internal security team. I hired top-tier digital forensics experts. I brought in private investigators with no ties to Whitestone. If Vanessa wanted a game of chess, I'd play. But I intended to win. It didn't take long. A month later, one of my investigators handed me a flash drive. "We found her," he said simply. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Vanessa, seated in a luxurious villa overseas, surrounded by a web of former disgraced executives, people fired or ruined during my takeover. She wasn't just trying to disrupt Whitestone. She was building an army, a network of the bitter and broken. The fallen wanted payback, and she promised them exactly that. Watching her speak in the video, calm and charismatic, sent a chill through me. "He thinks he's untouchable now," she said to her loyal followers. But no one stays on top. Forever. We'll bleed his company dry, tarnish his name, and when he's isolated, we strike. This wasn't personal for them anymore. It was war. But for me, it was still personal. Very personal. Vanessa had underestimated me, just like they all did before. She thought I would react emotionally, that I'd lash out, expose myself, and fall into her traps. She forgot who I had become. I wasn't the same Alex Pierce they destroyed years ago. I didn't seek revenge anymore. I orchestrated consequences. I spent the next 3 months tightening my grip on every aspect of Whitestone. I locked down supply chains, renegotiated contracts with exclusivity clauses, and cut deals that made it impossible for competitors to lure our clients. Vanessa's network tried, of course. They spread rumors, offered under-the-table deals, leaked fake scandals, but nothing stuck. Meanwhile, my PR team, armed with my blessing, crafted a public image so clean and inspiring that even a whisper of controversy couldn't tarnish it. Whitestone became bulletproof. Vanessa's attacks grew more desperate. She leaked documents attempting to revive old scandals. The media ignored them. She pushed fake lawsuits through shell companies. My legal team crushed them before they saw daylight. She even tried to sway board members. But they were loyal now. Not because they feared me, but because they respected what I had rebuilt. Slowly, Vanessa's network began to crumble. Betrayal breeds betrayal. Her followers, realizing the war was unwinnable, started jumping ship. Some reached out to me, offering information in exchange for forgiveness. I took it all. Every document, every secret meeting log, every recording. Then came the final strike. In a globally broadcast shareholder meeting, I revealed everything. The attacks, the names, the proof. I did it not with rage, but with precision and control. I showed the world that Vanessa Whitmore, widow of disgraced Victor Whitmore, had spent years trying to sabotage Whitestone out of pure spite. Investors rallied behind me. Clients praised my transparency. Vanessa? She became a pariah overnight. Her assets frozen, passport flagged, friends gone. And in the most poetic twist of all, her villa, the same one where she plotted my downfall, was seized in a government raid broadcast live across business news networks. I watched it on my office TV, sipping a glass of bourbon. Not with glee. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. Vanessa's game was over. There would be no comebacks, no final threats. She was finished. As for me, I stood taller than ever. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was defending my empire. Whitestone wasn't just mine. It was who I had become. As the news ticker flashed across the screen, declaring Whitestone's market value hitting a historic high, I leaned back and let it all sink in. I had won again. Not through hatred, through dominance, through control. And I knew deep down, no ghost would ever haunt me again. After Vanessa's empire crumbled, something unexpected happened. The world didn't just move on from her disgrace. It elevated me. Almost overnight, I became more than just a CEO. I became a symbol, a legend. Articles poured in with headlines like "From Betrayed to Billionaire, the Alex Pierce Story," and "How One Man Rose from Ashes to Build an Empire." I wasn't seeking fame, but fame found me. Invitations flooded in from conferences, universities, and global business forums. People didn't just want to know about Whitestone. They wanted to know about me. How did I survive? How did I win? What made me unstoppable? For the first time in years, I didn't shy away from the spotlight. I embraced it. Not for ego, but for legacy. I gave keynote speeches where I shared my journey, not as a victim, but as a conqueror. They left me for dead, I told packed rooms. But the grave they dug became the foundation I built my empire on. The words resonated. Young entrepreneurs idolized me. Struggling business owners reached out for advice. I became the face of resilience. The man who had everything stolen but took it all back. And more. Whitestone thrived beyond expectations. We expanded into new industries: tech, energy, international logistics. Every deal we touched turned to gold. Rivals couldn't keep up. Those who once snickered behind closed doors now begged for partnerships. I chose carefully who I let in. Trust, after all, was earned. Internally, Whitestone became a beacon for talent. The best minds in the industry lined up to join us. Not because of paychecks, but because they believed in what we represented. We were no longer haunted by scandal. We were driven by vision. I implemented policies that prioritized ethics, transparency, and growth. Gone were the days of greed and betrayal. Under my leadership, Whitestone became untouchable, and so did I. But with power came isolation. That's what no one tells you about success. The higher you rise, the fewer people you can truly trust. Even old friends seemed hesitant, unsure how to act around me now. Family members reached out, suddenly remembering we were related. I saw through it all. Their sudden warmth wasn't genuine. It was survival. I wasn't bitter, just aware. I kept my circle small, loyal, unbreakable. There were nights I sat, alone in my massive penthouse, overlooking the city that now seemed to pulse with my name. Some might call it lonely. I called it clarity. I built this life. I protected it. I earned every inch of this view. Still, echoes of the past sometimes whispered in my mind. Faces of Mark, Jenna, Victor, and Vanessa. Gone, yet forever part of my story. They were warnings, reminders. Not enemies anymore, just lessons carved deep into my journey. One evening, at Whitestone's annual Global Summit, I stood before thousands of employees, partners, and industry leaders. The room was silent as I prepared to close my speech. Many asked me over the years what drove me, I began. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It wasn't money. Not entirely. It was something simpler. They called me finished. They wrote me off. They tried to erase me, and I simply refused. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. The moment felt eternal. That night, as the celebration stretched into the early hours, I slipped away quietly. On the rooftop, overlooking the glowing skyline, I reflected alone. I didn't crave more. I didn't hunger for their praise. I was satisfied in a way I never imagined. They couldn't touch me anymore. They couldn't hurt me. I had taken every blow, every betrayal, every bitter lesson, and turned them into my crown. I wasn't just Alex Pierce anymore. I was the man the world once counted out. And now, they all bowed down to the empire I built. And I knew deep inside, this was still just the beginning. Success, as I learned, has a twisted sense of irony. You fight so hard to climb out of the pit that you forget how easy it is for someone else to dig one beneath you. For years, Whitestone thrived under my leadership. I had eliminated my enemies, rebuilt my legacy, and become untouchable, or so I thought. But power has layers, and the deeper you go, the darker it becomes. His name was Daniel Cross, young, ambitious, brilliant. I handpicked him myself. Straight out of Harvard Business School, he was sharp, charming, and ruthless in all the right ways. At first, he reminded me of myself. That's why I fast-tracked him. Within 3 years, he was my right-hand man, trusted with major deals, given access to company secrets, groomed, perhaps foolishly, as my potential successor. I should have seen it. The quiet confidence, the subtle shifts in behavior. Daniel didn't just want to help me lead Whitestone. He wanted Whitestone. He hid it well until he didn't, It started subtly, a few meetings without me. Clients whose loyalty suddenly felt shaky, employees whispering in corners. My instincts, sharpened by betrayal years ago, kicked in fast. I had my security team monitor internal communications. What they found confirmed my worst fears. Daniel had been quietly building alliances within Whitestone, department heads, senior managers, even outside partners, promising them bigger roles and fatter bonuses in a new era he intended to usher in. Without me. In private conversations, he mocked me, called me outdated, claimed that Whitestone's success was despite me, not because of me. He had even drafted a transition plan, his transition plan. He wanted to push me out, erase me from the company I bled for. It wasn't rage I felt that night reading those transcripts. It was disappointment. I had taken him under my wing, trusted him, given him everything. And like the others before him, he saw kindness as weakness. I should have crushed him immediately. But no, that's not how I worked anymore. Revenge had evolved into strategy long ago. So I waited. I let Daniel believe he was winning. I gave him more rope, approved his initiatives, allowed him to gather his allies, let him feel invincible. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, I isolated him, quietly revoked his high-level system access, shifted key accounts to loyal executives, had private conversations with the very people he thought he had turned. Most respected me more than they did him. They played along out of fear and curiosity, but when asked where their loyalties lay, they didn't hesitate. With Alex, they said. Always with me. When Daniel made his move, submitting a secret petition to the board calling for a leadership change, he walked straight into my trap. The board meeting he thought he controlled was stacked against him. Every ally he counted on stood silently as I revealed every detail of his betrayal. Emails, recorded meetings, witnesses. His face drained of color as I laid it all bare. You wanted my throne, Daniel, I said calmly, staring him down. But unlike you, I know every inch of this kingdom. He tried to salvage it, claimed ambition, misunderstanding. But it didn't matter. He was fired that evening, not quietly either. His disgrace was public, ensuring no major company would ever trust him again. As security escorted him from the building, he locked eyes with me one last time. There was no rage, just stunned disbelief. He never thought he'd lose. That's what they all think, until they do. In the days that followed, I reasserted control, made public statements reinforcing Whitestone's commitment to integrity and stability. Investors stayed calm. Clients stayed loyal. The storm Daniel tried to unleash was over before it even started. That night, alone in my office, I poured myself a drink and thought back to Mark, Jenna, Victor, even Vanessa. Every enemy had believed they were smarter, stronger, untouchable. They all fell. Daniel was no different. The difference now? I didn't even feel satisfaction anymore. Crushing him wasn't about revenge. It was simply maintenance. This was my kingdom. And in kingdoms, sometimes, the biggest threats don't come from outside. They grow quietly inside your walls, smiling while sharpening knives. But I was ready now. I always would be. Because I wasn't the same man they betrayed years ago. I was the architect of power, the master of consequences, the king they couldn't overthrow. And in this kingdom, betrayal had no future. Years passed. Whitestone wasn't just a company anymore. It had become an empire. Every market we touched, we dominated. Rivals didn't compete, they surrendered. Former enemies? Forgotten footnotes in business textbooks. I stood at the peak of an empire I rebuilt from ashes. But something strange happened when I reached the top. It wasn't rage. It wasn't pride. It was clarity. True power wasn't about crushing others anymore. It was about being undeniable. No whispers could touch me. No schemes could reach me. I had outlasted them all. Mark? Bankrupt and teaching night classes at a community college. Jenna? Divorced. Isolated and clinging to memories no one cared about. Victor? Rumors said he lived in a small apartment, still haunted by debts and regrets. Vanessa? Disgraced internationally. Her name erased from the elite circles she once ruled. Daniel? Last I heard, he was consulting startups who didn't know better. They were gone. Not killed. Not destroyed. Simply irrelevant. That was the real victory. Not watching them suffer, but watching the world forget they ever mattered. Meanwhile, I became something they never expected. A legend. Universities taught. Courses on Whitestone's revival. Students quoted my speeches. Business leaders sought my advice. Investors trusted my every move. I didn't just build wealth. I built something untouchable. The Alex Pierce brand became synonymous with resilience, vision, and ruthless precision. Still, I stayed grounded. I never became what they were. I mentored young leaders, donated quietly to causes that mattered, created programs that protected employees from the very toxic culture that once destroyed me. I made Whitestone a fortress, not just for profit, but for people who deserved better. And yet, at every major event, in every headline, one question always came back. How did you do it? I always gave the same answer, simple but true. They buried me, but they forgot I was a seed. The phrase became iconic, plastered across billboards, engraved in awards, whispered by dreamers and strivers chasing their own revenge arcs. One night, years after the storm had ended, I stood on my penthouse balcony overlooking the city. It didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like my kingdom. The scars from betrayal were still there, but they didn't hurt. They reminded me who I had been, and who I refused to be again. Emily had remarried years ago. Our daughter, now grown, visited often and loved me dearly. She didn't care about titles or power, just that I had never given up. That mattered more than any headline. I thought about everything I had endured, the lies, the setups, the betrayals, and I smiled, not out of arrogance, but out of peace. I won, not because I destroyed them, but because I transcended them. They had played checkers, I had played chess, and I was still moving pieces long after their game ended. As the city lights flickered below, I raised my glass to the night sky. Here's to the forgotten, I whispered. May they stay exactly where they belong, in the shadows. And with that, I turned away. Not as a villain, not even as a hero, but as the one thing they never thought I could become. Unstoppable, unchallenged, eternal.